I'm a big fan of his. He's got that something a little bit special about him.
Back when I was a bit younger, players were uniting Napoli in bunches.
He chose to put this on Ben White. He knows the rabid passion of those fans and how it can be pointed positively or negatively at an individual.
Personally, I want to beat Man City, and I want to beat Man City when he's there.
As crazy as it sounds, the goal is to win the Champions League.
The Premier League is back and Arsenal are about to go on a 3-month winning run. I'm Talia Lazarus and this is Inside Gooners. Yes, the only way we're going to help Arsenal mount that title charge is with positive vibes. So with that in mind, bringing the vibes today are former Premier League striker and Centurion Darren Bent, Arsenal Vision podcaster Clive Palmer, and you can block him on Twitter at Yankee Gunner, the Arsenal Vision podcast host Elliot Smith. Well, welcome, guys. Elliot, it's amazing to have you all the way from America. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, the jet lag is fading, so I feel pretty good. The coffee helped.
Well, first of all, I have to say congratulations are in order.
Yes.
So a big round of applause to anybody that's watching, because it was a third win for Arsenal at Tottenham Stadium this season, because Elliot and Clive, the Arsenal Vision podcast, won Best Podcast last night at the FSA Awards, and the ceremony was at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
And when we accepted the award, made the comment that it was no Audi Cup, but we were still happy to receive it, and it was met with a very mixed reception. So we still had to go with it, though.
You know what? It's nice. I'm sitting in here with some trophy winners.
There you
So
go. First of many for Arsenal this season.
there we go. That's nice. That's a nice way to put it. First of many for, well, this season. We've still got many to get. Yeah. So let's wait and see. So the dust has obviously settled on our 1-1 draw at Stamford Bridge. How's everyone feeling about Arsenal as we prepare for this extremely intense period of football coming up?
I'm feeling excited and nervous, but seriously though, if I put myself into an Arsenal fan's head, everyone's thinking we need to go on a run now. And then there's no one saying anything about a draw would be nice. That conversation stopped, doesn't it? It's completely stopped. We need to go on a run. So, going to the game, also against Forest, I'm thinking, okay, every 5 minutes it ticks on that we're not ahead, the attention will grow because the expectation is literally 3 points or nothing. So it's going to be an interesting, emotional day. If we score, it's going to be great. It's going to be really great, and we start and go and win the game. But it's going to be a really tense day on Saturday, for sure.
It's going to be difficult as well because Forest are a good side, especially away from home. I think only Liverpool have got a better away record than they have, so that doesn't bode well. But Arsenal have got to be confident now. It is getting to that territory almost where it's like you have to win every game, or you can't drop points, because we've almost given Liverpool a bit of a lead. I knew they'd be up there, but I didn't think they'd start or explode at the blocks like they have done. Manchester City have an air wobble. That won't continue. Obviously, the news about Pep and his contract as well will probably give them a lift. So it is getting to the situation where Arsenal do need to start winning, but Forest won't be no easy game. I watched them against Liverpool, where they got their tactics absolutely spot on. Yeah. Sat in, defended really deep, hit Liverpool on the counter-attack, they win 1-0. So I'm confident that Arsenal will get the result because they're at home, but by means they need to go on a run now and start putting some wins together.
Yeah, and I think Clive knows I do anxiety really well, and I'm feeling a lot of it ahead of this match. I think I actually feel this is a more anxious and big match than the Wolves game to start the season in some ways, because if you think back to where we were at the start of the season, we were the betting favorites for the title, right? We all felt very confident in who we were as a team. We'd come off a run at the end of last season where we were scoring goals for fun, keeping goals out. Fast forward to now, and I think there's a little more existential doubt about who we are this season, right? Do we have the goals in us? Are we going to reach the levels we saw last season? And so there's a lot less certainty, and everybody's pointed to this run as the moment where the season can really gain momentum. And tomorrow is where that has to start. And so I feel this is the trigger game where if it goes well, a lot of that confidence will flow back in. But if it doesn't, then there's going to be a lot of examination about where the season could be at that point. So it feels like a lot hinging on it.
Also as well, Forest are coming off the back of, they were an exceptional run, but the Newcastle result just all of a sudden, maybe, I won't say dampened expectations, because I won't say they were getting carried away, but they were on a great run, playing really well, 3 wins on the bounce. Then that Newcastle result almost came out of nowhere, where they just weren't the Nottingham Forest that we'd seen before. So of course, Steve Cooper and his man, they're going to be like, okay, let's kind of realign. And I always look at Nuno, and I'm a big fan of his as well, and I know people don't really like his sides, but I look at them and I think they're one side that are quite comfortable out of possession. Yep. They don't mind not having the ball much. they'll happily let the other team have 30% possession. And sometimes for Arsenal, that can work against them a little bit, because when other teams leave gaps, that's when Arsenal at their best. Free-flowing, that counter-attacking football is lovely. But with Forest, with the way that they play, if Arsenal don't score first, and as Clive was saying there, 5 minutes clicked on, 10, 15, I think it will start to get a bit anxious in there, because I'm not quite sure how good Arsenal have been, certainly this season, at kind of breaking down teams that have got that quite thick set, that block.
I feel like Arsenal fans at the moment, we're all going through this together, like the anxiety thing. I mean, and you're right, whatever happens, whatever goal goes in first, we're all going to be feeling the same. But then obviously Nottingham Forest have had a great start to the season. How do you think we are going to set up for the game, Elliot?
It's a tough one because it depends who's available, right? And I really hope there's been some rumor that Calafiori might be back, which would allow Timber to play off the right. We're not going to have Ben White for a few months. And I think when you look at what Forest can do on the wings, the pace and dynamism they have in Elanga and Hudson-Odoi, we really need strong fullbacks. I don't think this is a game where we want Thomas Partey playing off right back if possible. So Calafiori and Timber being able to play would be huge. Obviously, Bukayo Saka being available, because if Forest are content to sit off and play a little like they did against Liverpool at Anfield, right? A big win that they had already this season. I think the Arsenal crowd will start to get anxious if there aren't chances and goals for Arsenal early on. And so Saka being able to, first of all, maintain their attention on the flank, right? So they can't just cheat up the pitch a little bit and try to counter. That's going to be really important. Kai Havertz getting back to 9 instead of having to play that sort of 9.5 dual role that he's been playing with Trossard. So that's a lot. There's a lot of things in there that I think are going to be critical to us winning the game. But I will say this. I think Forest winning at Anfield maybe does Mikel a little favor, because he can point to that to his team to avoid complacency, right? Say, they may not be a big club in name, but look where they are on the table. Look at a result they got at Anfield against Liverpool. We have to be at our best, and that should be motivational for them.
When you look at that result as well, Hudson-Odoi and Elanga didn't even start. He started the game against Liverpool without those two guys, and I thought, what's he doing here? But when he brings them on, to have that option to come off the bench or start, I think they're so dangerous. I mean, Hudson-Odoi, I'm a big fan of his. I always have been. Maybe lost his way for a couple of seasons, but certainly now he's playing back at that level that saw him become an international. So Forest are there on merit. Regardless, if you look at some of the sides that are way down in the table, Forest are there on merit because they've put performances together, they've strung wins together, results together, and it's going to be a difficult game for Arsenal. But Arsenal have got the quality and have to believe that if they've got aspirations of winning the Premier League title this season and closing that gap on Liverpool and City, these are games you have to win. Regardless how good Forest are, player for player, there might be an argument for maybe a couple of Forest players that could get in the Arsenal squad, let alone starting 11. So Arsenal have to win these games.
Clive, what worries you then most about Forest's threat?
I like their system. They play 3 at the back, and they got that guy, the Brazilian centre-back Murillo, who I think Arsenal were looking at as a comparison to Calafiori. So I started to look at him. Oh, what's he like? He plays wonderful brand of football. He's got a great long pass. He drives out of his spot. Good player. No one's mentioned Chris Wood, by the way, who's scoring a few goals. He scored a few goals away with New Zealand international break. But I do think, in a strange way, we've had 2 international breaks so far. I think we had an away game after both of them. I think we have a home game now, and they have an away game. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how we set off. That's really important. These little breaks in the schedule like that are really important. And us having a home game, we come into our environment and we can impose our game on them. Darren's spot on about them being a counter-attacking team. And I am someone who rates Nuno. I am like you. I've always rated him. So yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting. But the Newcastle game, when you watched it, I think it was almost as if they reached their moment, say, okay, we're now quite good. What happens? And they got done properly, you know. And so I think I think we're playing them at a good moment. Hopefully.
So speaking of being at home, for our first 11 games, we actually travelled around 715 miles. And then for the next 11 games, Arsenal only travel 128 miles. That's a huge difference in travelling.
Yeah.
I travelled more than that just to be here for this show.
It's an absolute honour.
I do think it is a huge advantage, right, to be in London, or at least close to London during this period. Obviously, weather can wreak havoc with travel. It's a time when players want to be close to their family. It's a time when you can build some rapport in the team, just staying together and staying close to the Emirates, having your fans behind you. I do think that, you know, especially given that it's the attack that we really want to see energized, having more games at home gives us a chance to be on the front foot and play attacking football and get back into goal-scoring mode. So, look, ultimately, It's not like the old days. They're not going to take a bus around the country, and stay in motels. They're flying on comfy jets all over the country and staying in beautiful hotels. There's still going to be travel because, again, they're going to Lisbon on Tuesday. So it's not all at home. But I do think for a team that needs to get its attack in gear, playing at home more should give us a chance to play more front-footed football, which I think is the priority right now.
Do you know what, though? Sometimes it's not physical, because I've been there. It's mental. Like, just another hotel, another trip.
Yeah.
And although, and you're 100% right, it's the best buses or the best planes like that, or to train, first-class trains and all that. It's just sometimes just mentally fatigued where you're like, okay, I know it's not far, but we've got to get on another train for 2 hours.
Yeah.
We've then got to come back 2 hours, not going to get back till late. That might mess up the preparation, but mentally, that always helps. Just going, right, we're playing at home next week. We can kind of get back into that routine, because certainly in that industry, routine's everything. Like, I like to know what I'm doing from Monday to Friday in terms of preparing for a game, whether I'll be off the Thursday, off on the Wednesday, leaving the house at the same time to get to the Emirates. You like to know that kind of that continuity. When you throw an away game in here or a Champions League game away there, at times it can just mentally just be a little bit. So the fact now they're not travelling that far for this next run of fixtures, I think you'll see the benefits of that.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just, I mean, obviously it's football, but it's not just a physical sport. It's hugely mental as well. So in any capacity, the mental side of things is incredibly important. And then obviously, talking about this, we were talking about injuries before, and we were talking about Ben White, who has now just undergone knee surgery, which obviously isn't great. But what do you think then of the timing of all of this happening?
I think the surgery, I'm hoping that Arsenal allow him to do the surgery now, because he's been carrying that bandage for quite a while, knowing they've got other people back fit. And by other people, I mean maybe someone like Tomiyasu's now hopefully fit, as well as Timber and Calafiori. So I think it's well timed. I'm also, I said to Elliot before, I'm also pleased for him, because Darren, many times players are not fit when they play, and they get judged on half fitness. And people in the camp know, but maybe the fans watching don't know and understand. And he hasn't been the same machine going up and down that line this season, and it's quite clear to me why. And I'm glad this has happened for him. When he comes back, he can literally be himself again and get judged accordingly. Because fans are really short memories. We'll have him out of that team in 2 minutes in our minds, and have a couple more bad performances, which isn't really fair on him.
I think also just another point on that, it's again, like we were talking about the mental aspect of things. I think sometimes we forget as fans when a player has gone through a knee surgery or an injury in that respect, and then they do come back. We are so quick to judge them, even though we forget that, still human beings, but we forget what they've just gone through. And they don't want to go through it again, really, do they? No,
and it's got to be, when you come back from these type of injuries, it's got to be the right time. I mean, it'd be perfect for Ben White to come back in the new year and Arsenal flying, and they can ease him in then, because I almost understand it from both perspectives, is that if you're a club that's not so much struggling, but you're trying to get a bit of momentum, you might be kind of forced to go, do you know what, we don't really want to put him in, but we'll put him in for a bit longer than we need to. Okay. Whereas if Arsenal are winning games and playing well and Timber's back, Calafiori's back, then at least it gives Arteta a little bit of leeway to go, do you know what, I love you, Ben White, but I can give you 10 minutes in and pull you out. And there's a little bit of to-ing and throwing. Ben White will want to get back straight away, I understand that. So he'll still be a big miss. I'm a big fan of Ben White's, and even though, yes, he hasn't been up and down as he usually was, he's still fantastic on the ball, he still defends properly, still understands the role that Arteta wants him to play. So he'll be missed. But when he does come back, as Clive was saying there, I want to see the best version of Ben White, because for me, it's not even a debate. He should be in the England squad. He should have been in the England squad. Every single squad, the last 4 or 5 squads, he's been equally as good as anyone. So for me, he should be in the squad.
I think Clive, unsurprisingly, hit on something really important there too, Darren, in terms of if we don't have Ben White, we have to have Tomiyasu back. I think this is the moment for him to become one of the players of our season. Because if we think back to 2 seasons ago, when Saliba got injured, it wasn't Saliba being injured that necessarily derailed that season. It was Tomiyasu getting injured in the same game. And with all due respect, Rob Holding wasn't able to keep our defensive play at the level. Right now, we have 2 fullbacks in Calafiori and Timber. Calafiori, one who's had a little issue with injury, and Timber, who is back now from an ACL, but playing a lot. And if Tomiyasu is fit, we can really make good, sensible use of Timber and Calafiori. We play every 3 days between now and the end of January. The idea that we're going to put Calafiori and Timber out there every 3 days is not realistic. And when you look at the group behind that, Kivior, Zinchenko, Miles Lewis-Skelly, right, who's wonderful but a teenager, I don't think there's as much confidence in that group. You could even throw Kieran Tierney in there as there would be in a Tomiyasu. So if Tomiyasu's fit and can give us the ability to properly rotate and utilize Calafiori and Timber through this run, it can make a big difference to what we're able to do in the critical games. So I'm really hopeful he's back, because when he has been fit for us, I think he's a player who's really, really good, and Arteta's shown that he trusts him.
Do you know as well, it's funny, because when you speak to rival fans about that and you say about the injury crisis, you always mention Tomiyasu because how important he is. But they don't understand it.
Yeah.
So they look at it and go, you're just making excuses. But as Elliot was saying there, it's so clear as to when Tomiyasu's fit, he can play in a number of positions, and every single time he plays in a position, he never lets you down. He's never going to give you a 10. That's just not him, but he can give you certainly an 8 or a 7, which is more than adequate to play for Arsenal Football Club. So I think a lot of people, and certainly rival fans, downplay that Tomiyasu injury, just simply because they don't understand it.
You know what, Darren, if you think about just the last game of last season, we're losing at home to Everton, right? And who steps up and gets the goal to pull us back into a game which obviously didn't wind up winning the title, but I think it was still an important game for us nonetheless. It's Tomiyasu arriving on the edge of the box, scoring a nice goal. I think he has a chance to really make his mark if he can get fit, and I know that's a big gift with him, unfortunately.
So then let's move back on to Ben White. Obviously, we've heard that he's eligible for England again. Then, Clive, with your England hat on, it's good news, isn't it? But are you concerned that he could receive some abuse from the fans if he goes back?
He's already receiving it. I think people have opinions around players that seem to be perceived to be not turning out for their country, right? I mean, even the players recently that have been injured, they've been questioned by some of their own players in the squad, which is another podcast in itself, right? So I'm not sure that's healthy. So people have opinions, and that's up to them, you know. But it seems quite clear to me there was a breakdown of relationships within that England squad and within the coaching staff. And it's very, very clear. Many people know this. And there's some people being disingenuous about their responses. And Ben White took himself away from that situation. And now those coaches are no longer there. The rumour is he's now available for selection. Some people won't like that. They say you let your country down and you didn't show up. And I look at it purely as a human side of things. There's some people you can work with and some people that you can't. And he made that decision for his own sanity per se. So as a footballer, he's good enough. Let's not mess about. He's good enough. Yeah. And if he's good enough and playing well for Arsenal, he'll get an opportunity, hopefully. And if they don't choose him, that's the game. You know, it's selection or rejection. It's very, very cold. Very, very cold. And if he's good enough, great, he'll get in. And I hope he does, for him. I think it's a piece of his career that may be missing, you know, for the level of football he's been playing for 2 years. So I hope he gets back in my opinion. So.
Do you know, even if he does receive stick, and he probably will do because it's what it is. Jordan Henderson got it when he played for England and he came back from it. Harry Maguire got it badly. He's come back from it. So, yes, he'll probably get it at first, but I think it shows me if Ben White has made himself eligible for an international call-up, that tells me he's never had a problem with playing for England. Like, I'm pretty sure he always wants to play for England, but clearly, as Clive just mentioned there, he had an issue with Gareth Southgate and Steve Holland. Now, sometimes, again, some fans might not see it and they might just think, well, just get on with it, you're playing for England. Sometimes the work environment is such you have to be comfortable in that environment. And if Ben White felt like every time he was going there, he was being targeted, he felt like he'd been kind of mocked in front of the rest of his teammates, and he felt uncomfortable in that environment, then he should have the option as a human being to go, well, I don't want to put myself in that situation, so I'll take myself out. The fact that straight away he's then gone, as soon as they've gone, I want to be selected for England, that tells me that it's never been about playing for his country and representing his country. I'm sure if you sat him down and asked him, he'd say representing his country is the highest honour you can get. Yeah. But the fact that Gareth Southgate and Steve Holland had pretty much lied, basically, effectively. Gareth Southgate came out and said, nothing's happened.
Go down. Absolutely right.
Do you know what I mean? Be honest. If Gareth Southgate had been honest and said, right, there's been a situation, Steve Holland or myself have had a situation with Ben White, we've had a bit of a falling out, he's opted not to come back, people would go, fair enough. But he's almost tried to pull it on Ben White and go, don't blame me, blame him. And that's not really fair, in my eyes anyway. Be honest, you're the England manager. You've done a lot of good for England in terms of uniting the fans and the press and the players, making it a place to go and want to play for your country again. But then just be honest about it. Just say, listen, Ben White, we've had a situation, he doesn't want to represent England. Don't pull it all on Ben.
Yep.
And that's the thing, obviously, because there was not enough honesty, a lot of Ben White got a lot of stick from fans everywhere because no one was really sure. People were suggesting, but no one was really 100% sure what was going on. And obviously, we were saying a few players have now appeared to suggest that the Kazi reign was a welcome change from Southgate's tenure, and obviously even Jude Bellingham included. Does this maybe then show that Ben White did have a point at the end of the day?
Well, I think there's a few things here. First of all, everyone who's ever led people knows there are times when you have to pick your words very carefully, when everybody's really listening carefully. And Gareth Southgate had that moment with Ben White. He had a chance to say, you know, right now it's not right for Ben to be with England and he's not the right player for the group for whatever the particular reason. I'm not going to take further questions on this. We certainly think he's a great player and we wish him the best. He chose instead to make it Ben White's responsibility. Yeah. He chose to put this on Ben White. And he knew he did that because he knew in doing that he was taking the responsibility off himself. That he didn't have to be viewed as having made a decision or participated in that outcome. And as a manager of England, you know, one of the things that attracts people from my country to this sport in this country is the passion of the fans. He knows the rabid passion of those fans and how it can be pointed positively or negatively at an individual. And he chose to point it negatively at that individual. And I think the most shameful thing about it from it being a misunderstanding of this individual is this perception of Ben White not caring about football, not taking football seriously. Yep. And I would simply say, is there a manager who demands more tactically, demands more in terms of preparation and commitment than Mikel Arteta? And if you are someone who plays through injury for Mikel Arteta, who is picked in every game for Mikel Arteta, the idea that you could not take football seriously and still be an important part of a Mikel Arteta team makes no sense logically. So I think it rings hollow. It was a clear effort to deflect responsibility. And as a leader of people, I think that's a little bit shameful. So who cares what I think about the England manager, I understand, but I lost a lot of respect for him in that moment. And I think the narrative of Ben White not caring about football can simply be disproven by how important he's been to football man Mikel Arteta, you know?
I feel like that was just like mic drop, how you just did that. But no, you made a lot of very good points, and there was definitely, as you were saying, you can see it was a complete deflection. That's how I definitely perceive it. And it wasn't fair to put it on somebody, whether he likes football or not, but to put it on someone for then everyone else to come back and think, well, yeah, he clearly doesn't like football. And then to judge him on that when you're right, he's under Mikel Arteta and, you know, he's still playing through injuries and things like that. So,
do you know what, though? I don't think it's a case of him not liking football, because I think that's been a bit skewed as well. I just think sometimes, like, we don't maybe all get sick of football, but at some point, he probably just wants to take himself home and maybe not watch as much football as others. That's what I've heard. You know, people that know him have always said that. It's not that he doesn't like football, but when he's at home with his family, that's their time. He doesn't want to be then going, I'm going to watch football, another game and another game. So I think there's a big difference between not liking football and just picking and choosing what you watch. I'm sure if Mikel Arteta said to him, listen, Ben, we've got, I don't know, we're playing Man City at the weekend, just watch these clips of Jeremy Doku, we'll just see what he does well. I'm pretty sure Ben White would go home and do that. But just go home and because he doesn't want to watch, I'm just using an example here, Burnley versus Watford on a Friday night. And
everyone's like me and you. Aren't they?
It's so weird.
He doesn't want to watch that.
You would never hear a doctor get criticized for not going home and watching ER.
Yeah.
You would never hear a pilot criticized for not going home and watching aviation documentaries. You know, like you can be the best in your field and not have to go home and watch the stuff you do at work.
You're back to the bit about the fans being passionate. Football's different.
Yeah.
And fans watch it all day and all night, right? And so he doesn't do that. Well, look where he is. He's playing for Arsenal. He's playing for England. Look at his money. He doesn't love the game. It's almost like, oh, come on, we need to grow up a little bit.
But I actually get that because I grew up in a household where my brother and my dad, we watched every game. It wasn't just Arsenal games. We watched every single game. And when I was growing up, it was everyone all the time. It was whoever was playing, not just Arsenal, anyone.
I think more players need to come out and talk about how they spend their free time. Because Darren will tell you more than anybody here, it's a very pressurised environment, only becoming more and more pressurised. And when you come home, you need to go away and separate yourself completely, particularly after a game, and decompress. I mean, players struggle to sleep after a game. You know, it's a problem. You know, and then people who are not really sure. I mean, I only got a limited experience amongst academy kids. There's a lot of pressure even at that level, you know? People are so invested and they give them time off to decompress, you know? So we mustn't assume we know everything about everybody and how they cope with the pressures of football.
Do you know, also as well, when I played, like social media wasn't a big thing, there was only Twitter. So now, especially with social media aspect now, I mean, they can go anywhere they want. And all it takes is someone just take a picture and it's instantaneous. And then all of a sudden they can make any situation look bad, like Ben White walking into Nando's and someone will go, well, listen, he's not prepared for the game properly, like, look at this. And it just, that's where I can understand why sometimes they just take themselves completely out of it. And then people go, well, there's a big disconnect between them and the fans.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Because Marcus Rashford took himself to America and basically, and got pictured there, and he was just sitting there. Now, back when I was a bit younger, players were in Napa in bunches. Trust me. good job there was no phones around in those days, right? So it's a different world now.
I think there's a growing generational divide too, because there's a lot of people, middle-aged people like myself, who have opinions about how 21 and 22-year-olds should be living their life outside of football. And the fact is, even setting football aside, there's just an evolution in the way young people are spending their time and interacting, and they're playing games, they're on TikTok, they may be doing things that I wasn't. And so what they consider important to them and how they want to spend their free time in their 20s is going to be very different than someone my age who has different priorities. So I think there is an age divide there as well that's a hard gap to bridge.
I'm just checking, I wasn't there, was I?
No. Well,
Young men like
He'll
yourself.
check the archive folder somewhere.
I've got a picture.
I guess that's the thing, isn't it? It's still a job at the end of the day, and everyone needs to switch off at some point from their jobs. So then let's move on to the Champions League game Wednesday night. Clive and Elliot, you are both going to Lisbon, aren't you?
Yeah, is it Tuesday night? I think it's
Sorry,
actually
Wednesday
Tuesday
night, my bad. Wednesday night.
Yeah, and so I think, we're going. And last time we went to a European away game, it was Porto away. And now it's all going well until we stuck in the top corner. So hoping it's going to be a bit better this time. Again, it's just, our away record in Champions League is not great, if we're honest. And it's one of the things that we need to fix. And as people move towards the January transfer window in their minds, I'm thinking about the away scoring ability in open play. That's what I'm thinking about. And so, I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, the manager's moved on, so it'll be a new era for them. And I can't tell you what they're going to do, what the system's going to be. I know what they used to do. They used to play a 3 at the back. They used to have 2 10s behind Gyökeres, and they've got a great central midfielder, central defender, Diamande, very strong, Saliba-like. So I know their players because we like a few of them, So it'd be interesting to see what they do on the day. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm hopeful we can come away with something.
From what I understand, they have employed sort of a man-to-man marking system, sort of a middle press man-to-man, but that it can be exploited going long and going over it at times. And we happen to be doing more of that as it is. So that could play into a strength of something that's in our game, which would be great. Obviously, Victor Gyökeres is going to be someone everyone's having a good look at because he's all the talk right now in terms of the striker market in the Premier League. So he'll have a point to prove. He's obviously played in England, and I think he'll want to remind everybody how good he is. For us, I'm with Clive. That night in Porto was a lot of fun. The game, the less said about it, the better. And one of the things Clive knows from sitting next to me for a few games now is I kick every ball. I observe every pass that we're not making, right? You'd be surprised to hear how neurotic I am during a match day. But I was really taken aback that day at how conservative we were, how careful we were. And I think in Europe in particular, you've seen a very careful and conservative Arsenal. And I think it's time for us to break out of that shell a little bit and look like we belong on that stage, like we've arrived, and play a little more front-footed, be a little more adventurous, not wait for the game to come to us.
I agree with that point, but I think even in 1 year, Elliot, it's a new competition now.
Yes.
So that was a group phase competition where you're going away, you get a point, it's actually okay. Now we're in a much bigger league situation, and we need to make sure we're finishing in the top 8 to reduce our games. And so it will be interesting to see what our approach is. Your point's absolutely right. I haven't got a recent good memory of an away game. Probably Sevilla away was the last one, where we've really got out and imposed ourselves in an offensive way. And so I'm really looking forward. I'm hoping we can do that. It's important.
It was even the same to when Bayern. I remember going over there for the Bayern Munich game last year and doing the commentary, and Arsenal just didn't show up. They didn't believe that they could really hurt this Bayern Munich side, and I think that's one thing I'd like to see from Arsenal this season. I thought they played well against Inter, but still, at never any stage I think they were really going to go and score. I thought they played well. The general play was really good, and I think there are times when, and as Clive was saying there, just someone to step up and can they get a goal away from home and make that away trip in Europe a little bit more comfortable. Now, Sporting were brilliant against Manchester City and they won 4-1. I think did it finish 4-1?
So, yeah.
But Manchester City had chances, by the way. I mean, we look at the result and you go, they battered Manchester City. For the first 15, 20 minutes, Manchester City could have been 4-5 up in that period. So, yes, Gyökeres will be a threat, and he is the talk of the town at the minute. But I think with Saliba and Gabriel, there's more than enough there to deal with them, because you're talking about one focal point and that's it. And they've been really good at kind of dealing with that one centre forward. But again, I want to see Arsenal go over there and really put a stamp on the game and kind of send a message around Europe. A little bit like Villa did with Bayern at home. It was almost like, okay, they've arrived. I want to see Arsenal do the same thing.
So, Clive, when you sit next to Elliot, is it like sitting next to live running commentary the whole time?
It's very much like this show. I think, but I'm used to it. But on Gyökeres, it would be to see what he's like. So we've all YouTubed him, and we all thought, he looks quite good. But when you see him running against our athletes and see what he does, because when he played against City, they had a couple of young defenders back there, and he bullied them for a few minutes, right? But I don't think we're bullying R2, but let's see, right? If he does, let's get him, because they are, that means he's at the right level. So I'm really interested to watch him play.
So, and obviously, after defeat in Milan, how important is a win?
Well, I mean, it is very important. Candidly, I think we can draw that game and be okay because of the fixtures we have remaining. I think we have Zagreb at home, Monaco at home, and Girona away, which are games we can navigate. Ultimately, if you're not in the top 8, it means you have an extra round, but it doesn't mean you're out. So I'm sure everybody's sick of Arsenal fans saying, well, we don't have to win this game. We don't have to win this game. Like, everybody wants us to draw a line under a game and call it a must-win.
Self-defense mechanism. Just let us do it.
Self-protection, yeah. I think it's important from the standpoint of Clive's point of showing we can go away and win in Europe, because ultimately the goal isn't to progress in the Champions League, as crazy as it sounds. The goal is to win the Champions League. And I don't think you can have that as a goal if you just don't have the tools in your toolbox to go win away in Europe. So I would like to see us do that. I think to Darren's point, like, there are two Arsenals. Both are always organized and consistent. I have never seen an Arsenal under Mikel Arteta in the last couple seasons look totally out of sorts and out of shape. We're always organized. But the really good Arsenal adds to that organization cutting edge and threat and urgency to get the ball into the box and create chances. And away in Europe, that piece has felt like it's missing, like it did in Germany. So let's go to Sporting and let's not just be organized and controlled. Let's go add that extra layer of threat and show that we can bring that to an away match.
So with Amorim no longer in charge, surely that is an advantage to Arsenal?
Yeah, it could be, but also as well on the flip side, the Sporting Lisbon players are probably going to be, let's show it's not all about the manager, because that's all the talk's been for the last 4 weeks about the manager going to Manchester United. He's fantastic, he's the best manager in the world, all this type of talk. But the fact that now, if you're a Sporting Lisbon player there now, you're almost like, well, let's just show it weren't just about the manager. But again, it'd be interesting to see what Gyökeres does without the manager, because I almost feel like that system was based not solely around him, but it got the best out of him. Having 2 number 10s behind him, the crosses they give, getting in the box, getting the ball in behind early for him. If it's the same tactics, that will be interesting, but it will be interesting to see if they have got that same kind of cutting edge threat without Amorim being there. So it will be a little bit of an unknown, but Arsenal going to have to deal with that.
Well, it's exciting. I'm excited for you two to go and see how it goes. And you know what? We were talking about losses in the Champions League and away games. Well, you know what? We've got good vibes here today, good energy today, and we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it, guys. You have to believe in it. You have to. So anyway, moving on now from Sporting Lisbon to a sporting director. Arsenal's hunt for one continues, and this week we've been linked with Luis Campos, who is currently at PSG and is seen as an elite talent spotter. So Clive, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, this is an interesting moment in our recent history. I really feel this. Maybe I'm over-egging it, but I think it's almost like a referendum of where we want to go and what next, ambition-wise. And I don't just mean get a sporting director because he can get signings. I think if I look at the group, the coaches, the executives, what type of individual do they want there? What's he going to bring? So is he going to bring a network? Is he going to bring organisational skills? Is he going to help us maybe change our model going forward to be a bit more ambitious, to be maybe incorporate other clubs into our group? It's going to be so interesting to see what we do. I have this inkling for somebody a little bit older. I don't know why. I used the word gravitas from previous discussions.
How old is he, do you know?
Well, I think the Arsenal coaching team, and they're quite young. You know, the CEO's quite young. There's a little bit of experience in the group. Wouldn't be the worst thing for me. I'm not saying that people lack experience, but someone who can bring a different breadth of experience could be quite good. That's how you grow. That's how you expand. That's how you develop. If you're developing somebody, what are you missing out on? You know, in the world of football, which is always fast moving, always changing. So I'm conscious you need to build careers in the club and promote people at the right times, but there is a time for an external hire, and I think this is one. And my personal opinion is somebody with broad experience that repositions Arsenal in the European game, in the transfer market, as a serious player, that people look at us as a serious club. I think it's a really important hire.
Yeah, I think it's a critical moment too. I want to say I think an older hire would be great because I can live with the players being younger than me. But the director of football, the manager, and the CEO is where I draw the line. We went to the FCAs last night. There was a kid who won an award who's 13 years old. Yep. This has to stop. This is madness. It has to stop.
You can lie about your age. It's fine.
I mean, you can only lie about so much. You know? So that's why the podcast is audio usually. No, look, I do think we have to get out of this habit of making oracles out of individuals, right? Once upon a time, this was such an important role because you could unearth gems. You could find players no one knew about. There was hidden talent. You could steal someone away. I don't think those days exist anymore. I think with the proliferation of these video scouting platforms and data science and the world just shrinking, right, because of the digital age, there aren't a lot of hidden gems and secret players anymore. You know, I have friends who will tell me about a guy playing in the French second division or the Portuguese third division because he saw him on Y Scout or something like that. I think there's two really critical points here. One is just the soft skills. I think that's what made Edu really special. Edu can own a room. He can make someone feel like they're the most important person in the room. And to get deals done, to get contracts done, you have to work with agents, you have to work with players and their families. And you have to have that ability for people to just trust you and feel comfortable with you. And he was brilliant at that. We need someone who can do that part of it. But I think the other piece is, and this is where you hear people say, I don't want it to be an Arteta yes man. And I think that's such a negative way to phrase it. Ultimately, the manager is going to be the identity, the footballing identity of a football club. That's just how it is. So what you need is a director of football who can do two things. One, be a trusted ally of the manager. When the manager is moving in a direction that maybe isn't for the best, that director of football can push back and the manager will take that advice on board. But also, who can manage up? When the manager needs that extra bit of support, can go to the Cronkies, can go up to Richard Garlick and Tim Lewis and Stan and Josh and say, I really believe in the manager's vision, and here's why and why I think we need to support him. And so he's an intermediary in an important way. So I don't think we need an oracle. I think we need someone with great soft skills who will be trusted by Mikel and trusted by ownership to manage to be the conduit between those parts of the organization.
So then moving on to a different manager. I know this is the Arsenal show, but we're going to move on and talk about Pep. It was announced that on Thursday evening that Pep Guardiola would be signing a 2-year extension at Man City. Does it come as a surprise then, do you think? And is there something that he knows that we don't know?
Well, I'm gutted. I want him to leave. I'm honest. But, and listen, for the Premier League and the product, you want the best managers, the best players, and he certainly ticks that box. It did surprise me that he signed the 2-year extension. What that means, obviously, to the whole legal issue they've got going on, it doesn't really mean anything to me. I'm pretty sure these guys will have their own opinions. But the fact that he's staying at Manchester City for another 2 years tells me that they feel pretty confident that not a lot's going to happen in that period. But, I mean, again, if you talk about the manager, serial winner, the guy who knows exactly what he needs to get out from this side, the Manchester City side, will go again and again next season. Obsessed with football, which tells me he's probably already got targets in mind for next season. And it's almost a win for the Premier League, I think, because and also well for Pep. Where was he going to go that's better than Manchester City right now? I mean, absolutely everything at that football club was geared to what he wants to do and what he does really well. So that was always one I thought, would he go anywhere else? Because there's nowhere else for him, really. So, yeah, for the Premier League and for the product, I think it's good news for them.
Yeah, I think he offers them stability. So once he signs on that line, when they go approach players, they can talk about the manager being there. So he keeps them stability. I personally, I want to beat Man City, and I want to beat Man City when he's there. I really do. It's not just about when he's there. Yeah. You know, so I'm actually quite pleased he's staying, honestly. And it is, as Darren said, we talk about this league being the best league in the world. Well, he's the best manager in the world. So stay here, and hopefully it'll lift the standard of everybody else trying to chase him, and we can get past him and hopefully win.
Yeah, I think there's 2 points here. One is just on the legal side of it, which is I think it would be wrong to draw conclusions about the legal proceedings based on this. We know that Manchester City have... Well, people are going to do it. People are going to do it. But I think it'd be wrong only because City have unlimited resources, and I don't think they would be reluctant to throw a lot of money at Pep to create stability and a positive spin around what's happening at the club to just prevent people reading into the idea that rats are leaving the sinking ship, so to speak, right? So it could literally just be to put a positive face on it, and they don't mind spending the money to do that. So I'm not prepared to draw conclusions about the legal proceedings, only because I don't think anybody really knows where that's going. I think the other point, though, let's just take the other perspective for a second. Pep hasn't stayed long at clubs. That's not been what he's done traditionally. And they're not exactly playing their best football right now without Rodri. They probably have some refreshing to do. I don't think they necessarily bolstered their attack with the talent they needed in the summer. Pep is definitely the best manager in the game today and maybe one of the best managers of all time. But are we sure that he can go another cycle? Are we sure that he's going to find the answers continually? I think there's a presumption that he will always stay the best. But we've seen other managers, Jose Mourinho, for example, hit a moment where he just wasn't able to find the same magic with the same group. Sometimes the message starts to fall on deaf ears a little bit. So I hold out hope, and maybe it's silly hope, but I hold out hope that there may be a part of this with Pep staying longer than he traditionally has in other places where it could go a little stale, where maybe the ideas would be better off refreshed right now. So we'll see. I'm not convinced this means they'll just dominate for the foreseeable future.
Maybe for the players as well, because he's not quite demanding, he's very demanding. Mm-hmm. After a while, maybe with some of the players, I'm not saying they wanted him to leave because they probably wouldn't, because he is the best manager on the planet, but because he's so demanding and season upon season upon season as a player, can you lift yourself again? And like the fact he's had another 2 years, you're almost a bit like, okay, we've got to go again for another 2 years. So even from their perspective, I think they'd be delighted with it, because again, you put Pep at the top of that ladder, you almost feel like, right, they're the favourites again to go and win the next couple of Premier Leagues. But even the players, can they go again psychologically, mentally? Can they physically go again? The demands that he puts on you, because they go deep into every competition they're in. That's just Manchester City. So that's another aspect as well that we'll see what happens in the next couple of seasons.
So you guys are all saying that Pep might lose his magic spark. Well,
I'm just saying he's washed. I just said he's washed. That's it. Pep is washed. You heard it here first. We break news on this show then.
Meanwhile, Premier League clubs have approved changes to sponsorship rules. City had argued that no vote should take place on amendments to the APT rules. Here to explain everything is leading sports barrister at Church Court Chambers, Yazin Patel. Yazin, welcome to Inside Gooners. Can you explain what all of this means?
Very good afternoon to you. So this long-going saga around Manchester City, the Premier League, and their love-hate relationship has got another episode today where ultimately the Premier League brought forward potential changes which they wanted done following a tribunal back in October. In that tribunal, it was suggested and stated quite clearly that the rules in relation to associated party transactions regulations were breaching some of the aspects required in terms of UK competition law, also in terms of shareholder loans and other aspects of the regulations. What was stated by Manchester City at the time is these regulations now are not worth what they are on a piece of paper. Let's get rid of them and start again. Premier League decided, no, let's alter and change those parts of the regulations that are seen to be discriminatory or not lawful as a tribunal saw it. And so today's meeting was about changing one or two of those aspects.
Elliot, do you have a question? Because you actually used to be a lawyer.
Once upon a time, that doesn't reflect well on the American legal profession and industry in general. But yes, and a couple of things. Firstly, just in terms of the change in the rules regarding owner loans having to be fair market value. As I understand it, Arsenal have some of the loans that now need to be reconsidered for PSR, and they could also be converted to equity as a way to avoid the PSR ramifications. So do you have maybe a little clarification about how this could impact Arsenal specifically?
You say you once were a lawyer, you still are a lawyer.
Well, I mean, I guess you're always a lawyer in some people's eyes, but not in the eyes of the bar in the United States.
So ultimately, in terms of shareholder loans, as you fully know, one of the ways that football clubs were trying to ensure that money is taken into clubs without them having to have large debts, let's say Manchester United, is to have shareholder loans where you have interest rates at a very low level. And one of the challenges was that in keeping with the APT regulations, or was it not? And low interest shareholder loans, it was decided back in October, should not be excluded from the rules. Now, why was this so important? Well, because of the PSR breaches and regulations of those breaches. We've seen what happened last year with a number of clubs and how they had penalties, points effectively deducted because of the fact they breached rules. And so by having these loans brought into the APTs and questioned as to whether they were with fair market values or not, what it was being suggested was those clubs that had loans at a very small amount would ultimately therefore be being breached if it was found that those loans were actually not at fair market value. So to put it another way, what Manchester City are saying is, wait a minute, on the one hand, you have these loans at very small interest rates, but on the other hand, you have sponsorship deals, which you say could be inflated or above price. How is that fair competition, where you decide upon one being low interest rules, but that's allowed, but on the other where, say, a company linked to a large sheikh might think rather than 10 million, this club's sponsorship deal was worth 50 million. Well, that's up to them what it's worth or not. In the same way, it's up to an owner whether he wants the interest rates at 0.01% or 0.1%. And so that's where the two areas really in terms of conflict and breaches between the two really come in, where Manchester City are saying, no, these rules are unfair upon us and our kind of owners, and other clubs quite undoubtedly are saying, no, they are fair, because otherwise you'd be having large sponsorship deals. But in terms of interest rate rules, well, that should be allowed because it's owners effectively borrowing money to the club, but not wanting to rob the supporters and everyone else due to interest rates.
Can I ask just one more question then? Because obviously there was a tribunal ruling that basically said the APT rules need to be rewritten. City briefed everybody that this was a big win for them. I think this vote maybe puts the lie to that statement, but I would guess they're just going to run back to court and say the new rules are still invalid based on UK and EU competition law. So is this just going to be an endless cycle of litigation, or is the Premier League going to be able to defend these new APT rules as being within the regulations as outlined by the tribunal?
I would anticipate that we're going to be going further in terms of litigation. This is not going to end here. This is linked to the 130 breach charges, but more importantly, it's linked to what Manchester City and other clubs are saying, breaking the monopoly of the big clubs and their control. What they're suggesting ultimately is they should be allowed to decide what kind of sponsorship deals, how much should be allowed in, and what new money comes into the game, as opposed to the same clubs having the monopoly and control of the transfer markets and what value they have in terms of other clubs being sold, purchased, and also ultimately what other new money comes in, because PSR rules do control a great deal of really what money does come in. It's a way of controlling wages, way of controlling how much money comes into clubs. It's also really, if you want to be really cynical about this, a way of controlling who has the power at the top.
Thank you so much, Yazin, for joining us. We really appreciate it on Inside Gooners.
Thank you, and very good afternoon to you all.
So as Arsenal haven't played for nearly 2 weeks, there's been plenty of transfer rumours swirling around. So let's discuss some of the potential names on the table. Obviously, our attack has felt slightly blunt at times this season, so all of the names are forward players. So what I'd like you guys to do is give me a grade out of 5 for the probability of it happening, that them playing for Arsenal, and then also how much of a fit they are for the squad. So we're going to start with Arda Güler, the Real Madrid attacking midfielder. Darren, I'm going to start with you.
Not for me.
Grade out of 5.
Do you want to grade out of 5?
Yeah, I didn't say it to say it.
1. I'd say 1, because I just think he wouldn't fit the squad. Very good player. I've watched him at the Euros. Very talented, but are you going to swap one bench for another one? Just because I think that Real Madrid is not really getting the opportunities coming to Arsenal. I think there are better options, whether it be out wide or playing in that number 10 role. So yeah, I just can't see that one happening. Good, it's a good player, but not for Arsenal, no.
Yeah, what Darren said, 1. Yeah, I don't see the fit at the moment, and I'd rather make sure we've got a couple of young players in our squad, academy players, and Ethan Manieri in particular. I want to see him play. So yeah.
I just have to observe. I'll need notes from you on how you got Clive to follow the format, because that's not a thing that usually happens on our show. So
He's
kudos to you. I'd say, in terms of it happening, likelihood of it happening, I'd say a 1. Again, because I don't see it being a benefit to the player in terms of improving his situation. In terms of fit, I'd say a 2. We do this, don't we, as fans? We complain that we don't have enough in an area. Then when we get linked to a player in that area, we're like, well, he'd be behind this guy and that guy, so why would he come? Like, ultimately, I think attacking midfield is an area we could strengthen. Odegaard is there, and Nwaneri is the future. I don't think adding one more supremely attacking, a talented midfielder is too many to have. So I give it slightly more than a 1 in terms of fit.
Adding one more left footer into that space is too much of the same thing. If you're going to add somebody there, it should be a righty coming from the other side. because you've got some diversification in your squad, right? So having a player that's so similar to the players that we have, lefties coming in from that right-hand side, that's our identity, right? So I don't think we need another one, and that's why, for me, it's a no-go.
See, I say something silly, then he says something brilliant. It all looks like a plan when you get there in the end.
I just feel like I'm on the Arsenal Vision podcast and I'm just sitting here watching. Okay, so Alexander Isak that we are constantly linked with. Darren, you know about scoring goals, and Isak can do that, can't he?
I'm a big fan of his. A real big fan. I'm going to say 4.
Oh, nice.
And would I like it to happen out of 5? Because I just think he is what we're missing. He's got that something a little bit special about him. Now, I know he maybe started off the season a little bit slower. I think he was carrying a slight injury, but he started to look like his old self as well. Technically can play with his back to goal, can run in behind. Worst comes to the worst, can play off the left as well. I think he scores all types of goals as well. Like, so comfortable, lovely first touch as well, technically very good. I think the profile fits as well, big enough, strong enough to hold the ball as well if you want to bounce balls off him. Yeah, I would really like to see that one happen. Obviously, the stumbling block is, I think if Newcastle keep progressing, it might be more difficult, but if Newcastle then fall out of Europe again, I think there's an opportunity there. So I'm going to say 4.
Promising. Clive?
Yeah, the same. I mean, he's the one. If you've got ambitions, I mean, real ambitions, to be, top in Europe and top in the league, and competing with the monster that's Man City, that's the guy, right? Yeah. That's the guy. His conversion rate is really, really strong. He can play all different ways, and I think he's grown used to the league. But there's a couple of issues with it. He's expensive, and Newcastle hate us, right? So they don't want to sell to us. Yeah. So it's going to be a challenge. But from a fan perspective, if I was going to pick one, it'd be him and maybe one other. But it'd be him. I'd go for it.
But what's your number?
Oh, see?
Told you.
Yeah. 4.
Okay.
I'm going to get off the fence here. I think in terms of it happening, I'll say 3. In terms of it being a fit, I'd say a 5. And the thing I love is that he can play through the middle or off the left. Both are positions where we could strengthen. So if you want to play Kai through the middle and Isak off the left, that would be a really interesting pairing, I think. But then again, he can play right through the middle, and you could drop Kai back into one of the 8s, or just, actually rotate from time to time. So I love the talent. I do think that there maybe is a little bit of an injury track record there. He's staying fit now, which is a good sign. That would be the only hesitation. You hear the words Henri regen thrown around with him sometimes, and how can you not be excited by that, even if that's jumping the gun a bit? So yeah, I'd say 5 for fit, but 3 for it happening.
Do you know what? He might have a lot to do with it though, in terms of the transfer, because I don't really like seeing players throw their toys at the problem. I really don't. But it might get to a situation where he can turn around to Newcastle. If Newcastle finished 8th or 9th, instead of 9th out of Europe, and Arsenal coming in or pushing for the league again and finishing the Champions League, he might turn around and say, listen, I've been here for 3 years now, 2 years. Like, I want to go to the next level. Like, I understand you're going to get, I think it's going to take between 80 and 100 million to probably get him. I think it'd be like, you've got to let me go. So he might be quite key in terms of that transfer happening.
So let's put it out into his mind. Let's make that happen. And then finally, our third player would be the man we're facing on Wednesday night, Swedish striker Victor Gyökeres. What are your thoughts on that one?
Do you know what? I like him, and I've liked him from commentary days. I watched him a lot in the Championship. Even when he didn't win the Golden Boot and Chuba Akpom won it, I always thought he was the best centre forward in the division. I guess if you look at his Portuguese record, you'd go, it looks outstanding. But the fact he's scoring goals in the Champions League makes me think, okay, but I think maybe I'd like to see maybe one more year of him doing it consistently. So I'm going to give you a 2 in terms of it happening.
Okay.
We'd like to see it maybe a 3 to see it happen right now, maybe a 3. Maybe if he keeps doing it and scores goals this year in the Champions League and then next year, then that's, I think, a large enough sample size to go, yeah, he's ready for that level. But going from Coventry to Sporting, then to one of the biggest sides in the world in Arsenal, yeah, I'm not quite sure yet.
I've just realised you want 2 numbers. Right?
I gave up a while ago.
So yeah, I want to see what he looks like for real. And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking forward to the game in the week. I just have a worry. As Elliot said something earlier on, something we say all the time, there are no secrets in this game. He's 25 years of age and he's played in our league and no one picked him. And I'm just wondering why. I'm wondering why. You can miss people, obviously, and people can explode later in life. So yeah, I'm just not quite sure that's the one to spend a lot of money on. I prefer to spend that money on Isak, so I'll go 2-2. But I quite like how he plays. I like his strong running. his channel running, gets you up the pitch, and I quite like that about him. But I just think I had this nagging doubt about his absolute quality.
Yeah, I'll say likelihood of happening is maybe a 1, but the degree to which I think it'd be a fit, I'll say a 3. And the reason I think it's a low likelihood is after the Bayern tie last season, the club sort of briefed the press, from what I could tell, that both Mikel and Edu felt that increasing our offensive threat and firepower was a big priority for the summer. And we really didn't do that to the extent I think we might have wanted, and maybe even Mikel and Edu might have wanted. And I think Gyökeres was there to buy if you wanted to buy him. So I think in a summer where we were prioritizing attacking threat and adding to the attack, the fact that we didn't go make that deal happen indicates that at least to some level, we weren't convinced he's the guy. And if we weren't convinced he was the guy this summer when it really needed to happen, I doubt that opinion is going to change in time. The reason I slightly think he's a fit is only this. I can't remember in my time following the sport where I think the striker market has been less impressive. If you start asking people for the names of strikers, genuine center forwards, not a wide player that you could convert, something like that, there aren't a lot of names people give you. And so I think this club that has not invested that much in the attack, or as much as we might like, at some point is going to have to plant its flag. It's going to have to take a risk and say, we're going to buy this 9. Now, shouldn't say nobody, a lot of people had questions about investing in Kai Havertz, and I think that's proven to be a really savvy move ultimately. But there's going to come a moment where we're going to have to buy a striker, and it's going to be a risk. And maybe this is the guy, maybe it's not, but I don't think the market is so strong that there is that nailed-on guy that you're going to buy and everyone's going to go, yep, it's him 100%. So you're going to roll the dice on someone, and what he's done in Portugal is hard to ignore.
Do you know what? There's only 3 off the top of my head, and Arsenal are not going to get any of them. Haaland guarantees you goals. Harry Kane, well, he's not going to come to Arsenal. And Lewandowski's getting old now. They're probably the only 3 really in world football you'd go, it's not a risk, is it? Because these guys will get you goals, 30 goals a season every season. So I think whoever they looked at, even if they looked at someone like Ollie Watkins, he's been doing it for Villa, but to step from Villa to Arsenal, has he got that real quality? And that's why I think you look at someone like Isak, who we spoke about, he's got that something that's a little bit special that I think he can adapt. Every single time he's almost gone up a level, he's adapted really well. So I think if he went to Arsenal, I think he could do it.
Yeah, I think because there's so few strikers, when a striker comes along and scores 3 or 4 goals, his price goes to 80 million. So look at John Duran, right, at Aston Villa, right? And he scores some spectacular goals. And if you try and buy him now, well, good luck, right? It's going to cost you a lot of money. So this is why I tend to think we actually need a wide forward rather than a central forward. And that's because I think the game, the way it's going now tactically and how we don't go down the centre, we come in from the sides. I think that is where the game is heading, but just my opinion. So I've got a name, but I'm not going to give it to you.
That's fine. I know we can talk about this for absolutely ever, but we are going to move on now, and we are going to get some questions from our viewers. So our first question is from Instagram. Given Arsenal's bad luck with fitness regarding the fullbacks this season and our inability for just one of them to stay fit consistently, do you think that Kieran Tierney will be used this season? And please expand on what type of games he may be used in and how many.
You looking at me? Yeah. See you. I actually think I think he might go in January. Actually, if I'm honest with you, I think his time at Arsenal's coming to an end. He had a bad hamstring injury. He looked like a proper grade 2, 3-month job. So that's like serious. And I think he needs to go and play. Obviously, he got injuries at Real Sociedad last season. I think he may depart in January. Is my feeling. But if he stays, we're in about 4 competitions at the moment, so there's plenty of games there to get minutes to build him up. But I just got a feeling he might move on.
And then let's move on to our second question from Arsenal 23 Wenger on X. When the work on the stadium expansion starts and Chelsea have already booked Wembley for their stadium work, would you ground share with Tottenham for this season? Wow, what a question.
I mean, it wouldn't be my first choice, but I'm not the one with the season ticket who has to go weekend out. And by the way, I know he sent us a nice message on X the other day, so I want to say thank you to him because we saw that note. I would say that the ground share would not be popular, and ultimately, I don't know how logistically it would work because I think I don't want to over-speculate about what kind of problems there could be between fans, but I think Tottenham supporters, knowing Arsenal supporters were flooding into that area every other weekend or every weekend, I just think you'd run into too many policing issues and issues with just being able to control the smoothness with which Arsenal fans were able to attend those matches. It's a recipe for disaster. I can't see it happening.
I know it's a hypothetical question, but if anything, West Ham would be a better choice because West Ham's almost easier to get to.
Yeah.
So it'll be a better choice. We went to Tottenham's ground just yesterday, and I didn't like it. I didn't like anything about the journey, anything about it. So trust me, I'm not going there every 2 weeks. So I say it now.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that Arsenal people's played at Spurs, would it be, Darren?
No, listen, that's just one of the sins. But no, I agree. It wouldn't work. I mean, and I can understand it from both parties. Spurs wouldn't want Arsenal playing there as their home games, and Arsenal fans certainly don't want to call the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium their home as well. So I think West Ham, in terms of size, and you're right, it's such an easy stadium to get to. I know it's a little bit of away from North London, but it's not that far, and the roads to get to the London Stadium are not that bad either. So, yeah, I think probably West Ham would be a better fit for sure. And I also, as well, would Arsenal fans respect the Spurs Stadium like they probably should do? Probably not, and I can understand that. I'm not saying it's right, but I understand that.
Let's face it, having one football team playing at an NFL stadium is too many. Having a second football team at an NFL stadium, they can't do that, you know. So.
This isn't an NFL show, so... So now let's take you back in time to reminisce about some classic Arsenal days. Our man Romario Webster sat down with ex-gunner Philip Senderos.
Okay, guys, I'm joined by Arsenal legend and icon Philippe Senderos. We're going to ask Philippe for his top 3 moments in an Arsenal shirt. I'm sure you've got plenty.
Yeah, plenty.
Yeah? Okay, let's start off with number 3. What's your third favourite moment in an Arsenal shirt?
So third one, I would say the victory at the San Siro. When we won in the Champions League. It was a special game. No one expected us to win away from home, and a very special moment for me personally. And you know, great win away from home. I think it was the first English team to win at the San Siro. So you know, exceptional result as well.
I'll never forget that game because I had the white jersey with the writing underneath. How much did you enjoy playing with the likes of Cesc Fabregas, Adebayor, Theo Walcott in that team?
Amazing. I mean, I know them from the moment I arrived. I was living with Cesc for a couple of years. You know, to have my brother on the pitch and to have such a good atmosphere in the squad at the time, it was great. And you know, I remember this game very well because we played against a big Milan team and we were able to beat them in their stadium. And we really showed that, you know, we had so much quality that day that they couldn't deal with.
Let's go to number 2. What is your second favourite moment in an Arsenal shirt?
It's a bit strange. I have these 2 moments for me. They're number 1 equal. I will put my debut as a number 2 because I will explain the number 1 later. The debut for me, it's a very special moment. I come from Switzerland. You know, if someone would have told me at 5 years old, one day you'll be able to play in the Premier League for Arsenal, I would not have believed them. You know, even though I believed in my dream, but this was really a fantastic achievement for me, and you know, to live a dream like this. So my debut, I would put it in number 2.
You joined the club during that invincible season. You had the likes of Sol Campbell, Kolo Touré. How important were those guys for you in your development as a player?
Very important. These players. I mean, Sol was. I had posters of Sol Campbell in my room, you know. So to arrive and to be able to play with him was amazing. And Kolo, who joined a couple of years before, played midfield, played winger, played right back, and then settled at centre back and developed in such a a top player in the Premier League. I was really impressed. Yeah.
Okay, your final favourite moment in an Arsenal shirt. What's number 1?
Number 1 is winning at the Bernabeu. So this, if I can explain to you what my dream was when I was 5 and I started football, was playing at the Bernabeu. So my dad is Spanish, he's a Real Madrid fan, and I was living his dream as well on that day. And for me, it stays one of the most special moments in my career overall.
We've spoken about strikers you played against. That night you would have come up against R9, the original Ronaldo. I mean, what's that experience
well,
like?
This is exactly what, I had pictures of these guys in my room, this is exactly what it meant to me. And I didn't know where to look at first. There was Zidane, there was R9, there was all these guys, and I had to focus on my game and the way we wanted to play. to still go and win that game was an amazing achievement for me. Yeah.
And obviously Thierry Henry scored that famous goal. Describe the feeling of when you saw him sort of running through the Madrid team and he puts it away. What's the feeling like?
Unbelievable. I was just thinking I need to run to him, but he's so fast. I tried to catch him on the way and congratulate him. It was amazing from that team. You know, the belief that we had to go and do it away from home like this was amazing.
Thank you very much, Romario. So, Darren, you played with Philip at Fulham. What was he like in the dressing room?
Yeah, it was cool. I played with him twice, actually, at Fulham and at Villa. Really good teammate, really intelligent. Always looked after himself, was always brilliant with the younger players as well. Always tried to give advice and just a really, really good teammate, to be fair. I mean, there was never anything about him. He is exactly what you see with him as well. He's genuine, putting a performance. If his own performance wasn't good enough, he'd be the first in the dressing room to put his hand up and say, I haven't been good enough. So, yeah, really, really nice guy. And he's obviously working at FIFA now as well, under Wenger, which is quite funny as well. But, yeah, lovely, lovely guy. Can't speak highly enough of him.
Oh, it's really nice to hear. And then, what is everyone's favourite Arsenal memory from 2005 to 2008?
So I'll go first, but just to be clear, we all sort of picked ones ahead of time. So I'm deferring to a couple other maybe bigger ones, but the 07-08 season is one that I have a lot of affection for. I think there was an expectation that we were going to be starting over, and it was a surprising title challenge. Probably my favorite season up until last season, post-Invincibles. And that season got off to a good start. One of the big games that started the season was the Derby away, and won that one 3-1. Cesc Fabregas scored a screamer from 30 yards out, sort of preview of what he'd do at the San Siro. But then I think Adebayor had almost an Henry-esque volley where he controlled it with his right, up into the air, pivoted, and just top bins. It was brilliant.
I missed an absolute sitter in that game.
Did you?
Yeah, I remember it now. I went clean through and put it wide.
Well, if it makes you feel better, I don't remember that. Just remember
He
the
does
3
know,
And thank you.
Nightmares
Thank you. Was it like Son last season where you did it intentionally?
No, do you know what it was?
chance?
I honestly remember it like it was yesterday. Jermaine Jean has put me in with a little bit of backspin and I took a touch and I could feel Torre coming up my inside. And I've gone to hit it with my left foot, but with the backspin, I'm not making excuses, it comes back on me and I hit it and I get it all wrong and it just bounces wide. Yeah. And then a few minutes later, I mean, Adebayor's volleys.
There was a pivot there as well.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, I know this is off script, but can I just ask you one quick question as an actual striker who played the game? Like, when Son missed that chance, right, 1v1 last season, in my mind I'm wondering, does he know his fans don't want him to score it? Like, if you were in that situation, if there's even 1,000% of hesitation, you're going to miss a chance. Do you think that could have been in his mind at all in that moment?
Do you know what? Listen, I don't know Son as in personally, but looking at his numbers, he looks like someone like a bit like Salah that want their numbers, they want their goals. So I think he would have been desperate, regardless of what had happened. I think he would have been desperate to score that goal.
Okay. That's good to hear. It makes me feel better, I guess.
And breathe out.
I'm not bitter.
What about you, Clive?
So I tend to remember bad stuff. I know it sounds crazy, but that's stuff that stays into my head. If you say to me 2005 to 2007, that period for me just had 2006 in it and getting to the Champions League final. And although we lost that game, to be at that occasion, to be at the biggest game in the world on that day, that's an amazing memory that stayed with me. And so although it went wrong in the end, I just think it's an amazing moment in our club's history. And to me, that's it, you know, but result aside.
Mine would be a game that I played in, actually. It was Van Persie's volley against Charlton. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, what a striker he was, but just seeing him, the acrobatics to jump that high and volley it. I mean, the crossing from, I think it was Aboué or Laurent, one of the two, and it wasn't even a good cross. And I remember looking at the defenders thinking, we'll deal with that. And Van Persie just comes from nowhere, jumps between two players and volleys it. Yeah, for me, that's the moment. Wow.
Solid. I enjoyed all those choices.
If only VAR could have ruled it out.
Oh, if only, right? If only. Well, anyway, guys, that is all we've got time for this week on Arsenal Vision. Oh, wait, no, I mean on Inside Gooners. It felt like Arsenal Vision this week. A huge thanks to Darren Bent, Clive Palmer and Elliot Smith. We'll see you next week. And remember, trust the process.